Hey y'all, this is Tonette. BJ and I are back with additional answers to the question our friends, family, and coworkers ask, where y'all been? We are sharing our experiences and our opinion, and we hope you are informed, inspired, and maybe even entertained. In this episode, we share our pattern of checking things out before exposing our kids to some areas and a travel tip to evaluate the best time to travel. To get notified of future videos, subscribe to this channel. As we are looking back on our travels, some things are being revealed to us that we didn't notice before. There have been some subtle patterns to how we've been operating, and something we noticed is that we tended to check places out before we exposed our children to them. Sometimes we even did partial exposures with a day trip or staycation with our kids in a location before we went on vacation there for a full week. Our first instance of this practice of checking it out first occurred in 2000 when BJ and I went to Wisconsin Dells for a delayed honeymoon. You'll hear about a family trip in that area in the future. Another instance of checking it out first occurred in 2005 when we went on the cruise to Mexico with our friends. We took the Fascination ship out of Miami, Florida in December. Then we turned around and took our kids on the same ship out of the same port in March of 2006. Since we were already on the ship a few months prior to them, we were familiar with the layout and we were a little more at ease to have little ones on board. We were excited to have them join us to experience the ship, and we were thankful for Camp Carnival because our kids were watched and guided in children's activities while we were having fun doing adult activities. A third instance of checking it out first occurred in the summer of 2006 when our kids were away with grandparents in Georgia. We were expecting our third child, and we took a weekend trip to Baltimore, Maryland to try Maryland crab cakes in Maryland. Our focus for this trip were the crab cakes. We stayed at a basic hotel near the airport, and we intentionally skipped breakfast so that we could start the day with crab cakes. We had a blast hanging out, and we could see some places that we felt the kids would enjoy someday. You'll hear about us returning to this area with our kids in future episodes. After nearly 7 years of working and moving around with the company I worked for, we decided to move back to the Florida-Georgia border after our baby came. So we put our house on the market, and it worked out that the house sold in a timely manner. Then in October of 2006, we made our first move as a family that wasn't initiated by an employer. Throughout 2006, some of the new places we ate include Moe's Crab and Pasta Factory in Baltimore, Maryland, Ray Lewis's Full Moon Barbecue in Baltimore, Maryland, Phillips Seafood in Baltimore, Maryland, Pelican Point in Crescent, Georgia, Aunt B's Homestyle Buffet in St. Mary's, Georgia, and Lang's Marina Restaurant in St. Mary's, Georgia. The places we played include Camp Carnival, Key West Aquarium, and Playa del Carmen Beach. Our travel tip for this episode is to evaluate the best time to travel. The first thing we learned is to find things to do in the off-peak season. Early on, we were lucky to have breaks at odd times throughout the year because our son attended a year-round school and they took breaks in the off-peak seasons. While we understood and understand that's not the norm for most families, we found that traveling during a time when most schools are in session is less expensive and less crowded. It's less expensive because there are more hotels available to choose from, and using Priceline to name our own price on hotel rooms, we had a better chance of a lower rate being accepted. Another thing we learned is to determine if the trip is appropriate for all kids. When we went to Disney in 2005, we could have determined if our toddler was ready for that by taking a day trip to see Chuck E. Cheese in his full costume to see if she was ready for characters in full costumes. But we didn't think about that at the time. So when we went to Disney with our first two kids with the goal of getting autographs from all of the characters, our toddler was afraid of most of them. That's why I was holding her in a lot of the pictures they took with the characters. The final thing we'll discuss is to check to see if the weather is ideal. We won't get into a lot of the details here because we'll talk about them in future travel, but there were times when we traveled to areas that have snow in the wintertime and we experienced travel delays or detours. There were also times when we traveled to the beach in the summertime and it was too hot and too crowded. We later realized that it was much more relaxing to go inland for full vacations during warm seasons, and we could take a day trip or a weekend trip to the beach in the summertime and then do extended trips to the beach in the off season. We want to thank you so much for watching. As we press pause on answering, where y'all been? If you enjoyed it, like it, and share it. To learn more about our family travels, consider subscribing to our channel.